In a world where I thought love was a language I'd never speak, his words, "Would you consider going out with me?" struck a chord I never knew I had. I stared blankly at Jude, stunned by his bold invitation. Me, the office recluse, being asked out by one of our most personable clients. It seemed unfathomable. "I know this seems out of the blue," he continued with a warm smile, "but I've wanted to get to know you better for a while now. You intrigue me." I felt my cheeks flush as I scrambled for words. My instinct was to politely decline and retreat to my safe solitary office, but something in his gentle eyes chipped away at my guarded facade. I'd love to," I managed, the words escaping before I could overanalyze their implication. His face lit up with pleasant surprise. "Yeah, great. Are you free Friday night?" I nodded, suddenly feeling shy as scattered memories of high school dances and my college roommates' many suitors flashed through my mind. My scant romantic history felt woefully inadequate preparation for an evening alone with Jude. As we exchanged numbers, planning the location and time, apprehension and excitement dueled within me. I had always admired Jude from afar, drawn to his affable confidence and easy charm. But I never imagined his interest would extend to someone like me, the office introvert who preferred headphones and spreadsheets to happy hours with colleagues. That Friday evening, I agonized over my outfit, changing 3 times before settling on a simple black dress and heels. I barely recognized my reflection, a far cry from the jeans and blouses I lived in at the office. As the Uber approached the restaurant, my nerves kicked into overdrive. "You can do this," I told myself. "Just make conversation." I was greeted by the scent of grilled meat and raucous laughter as I walked through the doors. The buzz of a Friday night crowd set my anxiety on edge. But then I spotted Jude waving at a small table nestled in a quiet corner. His smile eased my tension. "You look beautiful," he said, pulling out my chair. I lowered myself down, smoothing my dress self-consciously. "This place is really nice. Do you come here a lot?" I asked. As we fell into casual banter about local restaurants, my nervousness gradually gave way. Jude's presence was disarming, engaged but relaxed, funny but thoughtful. Our conversation drifted seamlessly from work to hobbies to childhood memories over steak frites and wine. I barely touched my food, too caught up in his entertaining stories to think about eating. Jude jumped from topic to topic with enthusiastic ease, while I mainly listened, interjecting occasional questions or reactions. Despite my tendency to avoid eye contact, I found myself stealing glances at his bright amber eyes as he spoke. After the plates were cleared, Jude glanced at his watch. "I didn't mean to keep you so late. I know it's a work night." "Oh, that's okay," I said quickly. In truth, I had barely noticed the passing hours in his company. As we walked out to catch our Ubers, Jude gently brushed his hand against mine. The subtle contact sent a spark through my skin. "I had a wonderful time, Alara," he said softly. "Would you want to go out again next weekend?" I nodded, suddenly unable to find my voice. As my Uber pulled up, Jude leaned in, planting a delicate kiss on my cheek. "Good night," he whispered before turning to leave. I watched him disappear into the night, my fingers touching the spot his lips had grazed. The chord he struck within me now hummed with new life. I knew in that electric moment that my world would never be the solitary place it once was. Our bliss lasted only a few short years before life threw its first major obstacle at us. Barely 2 years into our marriage, Jude's promising startup collapsed almost overnight, the victim of embezzlement by a duplicitous business partner. I still remember Jude's ashen face when he told me the news over the phone. "It's all gone, Alara. Everything." His voice cracked as he explained how his conniving co-founder had drained their accounts before disappearing without a trace. My heart ached for my kind-hearted husband, knowing how much blood and sweat he had poured into his company. I rushed to meet him, enveloping his slumped frame in my arms. "I'm so sorry, Jude," I whispered, holding him tightly. "We'll get through this. I promise." In the months that followed, we slowly adjusted to our new financial reality. The lease on our trendy apartment was not renewed. Designer brands and upscale restaurants were replaced with thrift stores and home cooking. Jude fell into a period of despair, struggling to pull himself out of bed most mornings, much less send out job applications. Eventually, our dwindling savings forced my hand. One late night, Jude came home to find me sitting solemnly at our kitchen table. "We can't avoid it anymore. One of us needs a steady job with benefits, I said gently. Jude stared at the floor silently before sinking into the chair across from me. I know, he finally replied, his voice laced with shame. I'm trying, Alara. These past few months have been difficult. I reached for his hand reassuringly. Let me job hunt for a while. My background may make it easier for me to find something quickly. Though it wounded his pride, Jude eventually conceded. Within a few weeks, I leveraged my financial analysis skills into a mid-level position at a thriving corporation. Meanwhile, Jude half-heartedly submitted applications, his enthusiasm still dampened. Upon receiving my first paycheck, I surprised Jude with dinner at our favorite upscale restaurant, but instead of delighting him, the extravagant evening seemed to underscore his feelings of failure. We can't afford this, Alara, he said sullenly, eyeing the polished surroundings. Not on an administrative assistant's salary. Stung by his thoughtless words, I bit my tongue to restrain a retort. Later, I tried gently broaching his comment, but Jude refused to discuss it further. As I drifted to sleep that night, an uneasy feeling stirred within me. The dynamics of our relationship were shifting, but to what end I did not yet know. Over the next year, Jude cycled through short-lived contract jobs while my career advanced rapidly. Each of my promotions and pay raises seemed to drive the wedge between us in deeper. Pleasant dinners would suddenly flip into moody silences if I mentioned work. Offhand comments about my lucky break stung. But Jude's biggest blow came on the heels of my latest achievement, a senior manager role that nearly doubled my prior income. I arrived home thrilled to share the good news, only to find Jude pacing angrily. I can't keep doing this, he erupted before I could even speak. Watching you succeed so effortlessly while I flounder. Why did I bother with college when you make twice my income without even trying? I stood speechless, stricken by his verbal attack. Jude, that's not fair, I finally responded, fighting back tears. My job requires 80-hour weeks and extensive travel. You know I would happily trade places. Oh, please, he scoffed. You love the fancy office and business trips. Don't pretend this hasn't been the best thing that ever happened to your career. As his cruel words echoed through our silent apartment, an image of the gentle man I married flickered in my mind. The man now standing before me, twisted by envy and pride, felt like a stranger. My heart broke, realizing the Jude I loved may be gone forever. The months following Jude's outburst dragged on, our relationship strained by unspoken hurts. My demanding job kept me traveling frequently, leaving little time to mend the widening rift between us. During a rare extended stay home, I was surprised to find a sharply dressed Jude waiting with 2 glasses of wine when I returned one evening. Congratulations are in order, he declared, handing me a glass. I started a new position today, at Richardson Financial. I stared blankly, struggling to process this sudden news after so many months adrift. Jude continued explaining his role as a junior broker at the prestigious firm while I nodded mutely. This is wonderful news, I finally managed. What prompted you to apply there specifically? Jude refilled our glasses, his mood buoyant. I realized I couldn't sulk forever, and I know Richardson was on your dream company's list from business school. I detected an unspoken message in his pointed remark. By choosing a firm I admired, perhaps Jude hoped to prevent any envy on my part. I brushed the implication aside, focusing on my relief at this positive development. Over celebratory pasta, Jude enthusiastically outlined his plans to quickly climb the corporate ladder. I smiled encouragingly, though uncertainty lurked at the back of my mind. Jude's checkered employment history left me skeptical of his staying power in the notoriously cutthroat environment, but I kept silent, not wanting to dampen his fledgling confidence. Well, I'm off to bed, Jude said, kissing my cheek after dinner. 5 a.m. comes early when you actually have somewhere to be. I awoke the next morning to find Jude already gone. A quickly scrawled note on the counter wished me a nice day. As I surveyed the remnants of last night's feast, I felt a palpable emptiness. I longed for the days when lazy Saturday mornings meant lingering in bed together before tackling chores or enjoying leisurely brunch dates. Over the next few months, Jude and I mostly passed like ships in the night. My global travel increased substantially with a major product launch, leaving me perpetually jet-lagged. Meanwhile, Jude rapidly advanced at Richardson Financial, regularly working 12-plus-hour days. We traded quick voicemails and the occasional takeout dinner, too exhausted for meaningful interaction. But slowly, our financial state improved with Jude's rising income. We moved into a more spacious apartment closer to Richardson's headquarters. Jude leased a shiny BMW to match his new professional persona. My pay bumps had bought us time, but now Jude's earnings afforded us true stability. I noticed small changes, too. Jude's expensive haircuts, new custom-tailored suits, and sudden golf habit with the guys from work. During my fleeting visits home, Jude entertained me with amusing corporate stories, though names and context often blurred together. "Richardson sure keeps you busy, I commented one night after Jude dismissed a call from a colleague. "Yeah, it's non-stop, but that's life in this industry," he replied. As he detailed his latest high-profile case, Jude's face glowed with vigor and pride. The shadow of resentment and defeat I had watched haunt him these past years finally lifted. My husband had returned, though in an unexpected form. With our careers firmly stabilized and finances on the rebound, I optimistically hoped our marriage, too, could now begin healing. Surely this new upward trajectory marked the end of our relationship woes. Or so my naive heart believed at the time. But unbeknownst to either of us, an unpredictable storm brewed just over the horizon, one that would change the course of our lives forever. I quit. Jude's fork halted midair, a bit of egg dangling precipitously. "You what?" I took a deep breath, grasping my mimosa tightly. "I quit my job as of today." Jude slowly lowered his fork to the plate with a gentle clink. "I don't understand. Why would you quit without discussing it with me first?" "I know, I'm sorry," I replied. It was an impulsive decision, but the timing felt right. I went on to explain my growing disenchantment with the corporate rat race, the endless slog of meetings and metrics, losing sight of any real purpose. And then an email landed offering me a lucrative freelance financial writing position. Before I could overthink it, I resigned. Jude rubbed his temple, processing this bombshell development. I braced myself for criticism over my rash choice. "Well, I support you," he finally said. "I know how miserable all that travel made you. Just promise you won't become some starving artist now," he added with a wink. I laughed, relief washing over me. "I make more per hour now than with a salary. We'll be fine." In my euphoria over dumping my corporate shackles, I failed to notice Jude's smile not quite reaching his eyes. Over the next few months, I settled happily into my new remote freelance role. The flexible schedule afforded me time to pursue photography and pottery classes, long-neglected passions. With Jude frequently working late, I cherished reconnecting with these creative interests. One evening, while crafting a vase, Jude arrived home unusually early, and not alone. I turned to find an immaculately dressed elderly woman clutching his arm. "Alara, meet my mother Mara," Jude announced. "She'll be staying with us a while." I froze, struggling to process this unexpected guest now surveying my clay-splattered apron with thinly veiled disdain. Jude had never once mentioned his mother coming to visit, much less live with us. "Wonderful to meet you," I managed faintly. "How long exactly was a while?" In the uncomfortable days that followed, I learned Mara's husband had recently passed away after a long illness. According to Jude, the loss left her too fragile to care for their suburban home alone. I empathized with her grief, even as her imposing presence invaded our home. Mara scrutinized our apartment with pursed lips. The modern artwork, my orchid garden, Jude's beloved jazz vinyl collection. Everything seemed to offend her traditional sensibilities. Without asking, she rearranged furniture to allow proper flow, and stocked our kitchen with bizarre health concoctions. Worst of all, Mara's constant, unsolicited advice infuriated me. She critiqued my writing career as a flighty pastime, suggested I dress more modestly, and outright condemned the premarital intimacy Jude and I shared, in our own home. I urged Jude to intervene about his mother's behavior multiple times, but he merely shrugged, responding, "It's just her way. She means well." As Mara's presence infiltrated each room like an invasive species, I sensed my sanctuary dissolving. Lying awake at night, I listened anxiously to Jude reassuring his mother through the thin walls after every minor stressor. The man I once considered my closest confidant now reserved that role for the intruder down the hall who eyed me like a troublesome child. And somehow I had allowed this. The passive husband and domineering mother now controlled our home, while I willingly relinquished my power just to keep the peace. The realization churned a growing fury I could no longer contain. The shrill ringing of my cell phone jarred me from sleep. I fumbled groggily for the device, Jude's name flashing urgently on the screen. "Hello, Jude?" "Alara." His voice was strained with a chilling edge I'd never heard before. "The police just left. Get back here now." The line went dead before I could respond. I stared at the phone, my groggy mind racing through possible emergencies. Sirens blaring past my hotel had awoken me just an hour ago. Were we robbed? Surely no mere household mishap warranted Jude's cryptic tone. I hurriedly dressed and raced home, pacing tensely as the Uber crawled through early morning traffic. I arrived to find an eerie quiet, no signs of forced entry or robbery. But the acidic scent of bleach hung cloyingly in the air. I moved cautiously through each room, ledgering the undisturbed valuables with confusion before noticing the bathroom. Harsh fluorescent light spilled into the hall from the ajar door. Inside, I gasped to discover blood smeared across the newly scrubbed tile walls. The metallic stench overwhelmed me. I clutched the doorway in horror. What had happened here? Just then Jude emerged, his shirt and hands still speckled with scarlet stains. Upon seeing me, his mouth twisted into a snarl. "There you are. This is your doing," he hissed, jabbing his finger toward the lurid scene. "I told the police what really happened, even covered up your rage tantrum, but if you ever lay hands on my mother again—" "What? Jude, I just got home. What on earth are you saying?" I cried. His bizarre accusation made no sense. But before I could plead further, Mara appeared behind Jude's shoulder, an exaggerated slump in her usually ramrod posture. "I tried so hard to keep the peace between you two," she whimpered pathetically. As Jude comforted his clearly unharmed mother, their distorted narrative finally registered. They had concocted this elaborate scene to frame me as unstable and violent. My hands curled involuntarily into fists as I marched toward Mara, ready to confront her deceit. Sensing imminent confrontation, Jude swiftly positioned himself between us. "Officer Costas allowed us to handle this discreetly, since Mother isn't pressing charges," he said. "But he assured me they'll be keeping close watch." I opened my mouth to refute Jude's outrageous threat, but stopped short. Their determination to paint me as an aggressor was suddenly clear. Engaging would only legitimize this infuriating fabrication. Without a word, I turned my back on them and retreated outside to calm my spiraling thoughts. Over the next week, Jude and Mara carried on with their fraudulent charade. She wore a wrist brace for her sprain, while neighbors and Jude's colleagues received anonymous warnings about my concerning temper. My existence became an endless gauntlet of thinly veiled antagonism and betrayal. Soon after, while enjoying a rare solitary afternoon, the doorbell's obnoxious chime broke my focus. I opened it reluctantly, worried Jude had forgotten his keys again, only to find an unfamiliar gentleman clutching a thick folder. "Good afternoon, ma'am. I'm Anthony Giles, Social Services," he stated. "I'll need to speak with you about the incident on the 16th. Before I could protest, he stepped inside, flicking open his folder dramatically to begin his interrogation. As Mr. Giles bombarded me with patronizing questions, implying my guilt, fury and frustration welled up dangerously. But I knew reacting emotionally would only legitimize his suspicions. So I calmly recounted my factual innocence despite his transparent agenda against me. Fortunately, he left empty-handed but warned further outbursts would involve children's services regarding my ability to safely parent. Shutting the door firmly against his retreating back, hot tears finally spilled down my cheeks. The realization crashed over me. To save myself, I had to abandon this house of lies. No matter the cost. I awoke well before sunrise, Jude's whistling snores grating in my ear. Slipping silently from beneath the sheets, I tucked my pre-packed bag by the front door and contemplated my next move. Today was the day. I would finally confront Jude about the cruise brochures and love poems stashed in his gym bag that confirmed my worst fears. For weeks, an unshakable feeling in my gut whispered Jude was having an affair. When traces first surfaced, I rationalized them away, not yet ready to destroy our already fractured bond. But the mounting evidence now demanded action. As I brewed coffee, I had no intention of drinking, My mind raced through potential scripts for the impending confrontation. Jude often left his work phone unattended on the counter, my chance to gather final proof. When I heard the buzz of a new text notification, my pulse quickened. I tapped the phone gently, stomach churning as the lock screen preview exposed everything. Lurid messages from a contact named Lola Peach filled the screen, leaving nothing to doubt. As I scrolled in horror, hot tears spilled down my cheeks at the graphic descriptions of past rendezvous and enthusiastic plans for reconnecting post-cruise. In that moment, something severed deep within me. The tenuous threads still clinging to hope or denial now snapped entirely. I backed away from the damning device, resolve cementing. Today the pretense would end. I busied myself with mundane tidying, awaiting signs of life from the bedroom. Before long, Mara emerged scowling. News of my resignation last week from the volunteer board she convinced me to join had earned persistent cold shoulders. "Morning, Mara," I offered politely. Her responding sneer said everything. As she shambled off to the couch, Jude finally surfaced. I steeled myself for the showdown ahead. "Jude, do you have a minute to chat?" I asked as casually as possible. He glanced at his watch distractedly while gathering work items scattered around the kitchen. "Can it wait, babe?" "Big presentation today," came his dismissive reply. In the past, I would have uttered a timid, "no problem," before sending him off with a forced smile, but not today. "I'm afraid this can't wait," I said, firmly blocking his path. "We need to discuss your upcoming cruise and Lola Peach." I watched the color drain from his face. "What are you talking about?" he sputtered unconvincingly. "I don't know any Lo." "Save it," I snapped. Months of suppressed rage now roared loose. "I'm done with your lies. I saw the disgusting messages you left open on your phone. How long did you think you could keep screwing this whore behind my back?" His lips pressed into a rigid line. Before he could reply, an anguished wail erupted from the couch. We turned to see Mara stagger toward us, heaving with dramatic sobs. "I can't bear this cruelty," she cried. "Jude, she's set on destroying this family over pure fantasy." Jude rushed to comfort her, while casting me an icy glare that screamed, "How could you upset my mother this way?" In past arguments, Mara weaponizing her emotions could shame me into silence, but her histrionic meltdown only hardened my resolve now. Without another word to either of them, I stepped outside, slamming the front door with an earth-shaking finality. As my Uber sped away, I grasped the full reality of what I was fleeing, a pathological narcissist twisted by jealousy. Her weak-willed puppet son, so easily manipulated. Their toxic delusions threatened to subsume me completely. Well, not anymore. Today my emancipation began. In the weeks following my dramatic exit, I immersed myself in dismantling the intricate web of lies Jude and his mother had woven. Meticulously documenting their misdeeds became my obsession. I dodged Jude's endless calls and texts, ranging from righteous indignation to desperate pleas for reconciliation. Responding emotionally served no strategic purpose. Instead, I quietly retained cutthroat attorneys and private investigators, methodically building irrefutable cases of infidelity and slander. With my evidence nearing courtroom-ready status, I decided the time had come for a final confrontation on my terms. I invited Jude and Mara to meet at a posh restaurant downtown, sending the address anonymously to pique their curiosity. Right on time, I spotted Jude entering with Mara clinging possessively to his elbow. Good, they took the bait. Allowing them a few minutes to settle uncomfortably at the table, I finally made my entrance. "You actually came. Bravo," I announced acidly, relishing their shocked expressions at my abrupt arrival. Without waiting for a response, I opened my briefcase and theatrically flung 2 manila folders onto the tablecloth, their damning labels clearly visible. Folder 1, Infidelity. Folder 2, Emotional Abuse and Slander. Jude visibly paled while Mara's razor-sharp eyes narrowed. "Whatever nonsense this contains holds no weight," she scoffed. "You always were drama queen." Ignoring Mara's delusional barbs, I focused intently on Jude. The folder contents will speak for themselves, but allow me to summarize. For the next excruciating half-hour, I calmly detailed Jude's long-running affair and sexting habits backed by photographic evidence, private investigator reports, and credit card receipts. Mara sputtered baseless denials until Jude finally admitted guilt in a choked whisper. "Well, she drove you to it," Mara shrieked. A wife should meet her husband's needs to prevent wandering eyes. Slamming my palm violently on the table, I cut her repulsive tirade short. You will not defend his behavior. He is a grown man responsible for his abhorrent choices. Turning my glare back to Jude, I continued, and according to the investigator, Lola Peach is just one of several women you've maintained relations with. Jude hastily tried placating me by questioning the ethics of hiring spies, but my bone-chilling stare silenced further protests. After a few moments, I resumed my diatribe by exposing their slanderous hoax, portraying me as violent and unstable. I have signed affidavits from the responding officers and social workers strongly disputing your perjured claims, I concluded, shoving the paperwork toward them contemptuously. Watching Jude visibly withdrawing into his seat like a scorned child while Mara seethed quietly was profoundly satisfying. I rose calmly from my seat, gathering the damning evidence now scattered across the table. Consider this your one warning to cease spreading vicious lies about me to salvage your shredded reputations. I still have ample ammunition left if necessary for courtroom proceedings. Leaving them speechless amidst the upended wreckage of secrets and lies, I strode briskly towards sweet freedom. The bindings tethering me to their dysfunction now dissolved fully. I was finally free. Watching the moving truck disappear around the corner, I sighed deeply. The bittersweet pang of signing the divorce papers just hours earlier still lingered, but any residual heartache faded, standing here on the curb before my very own food truck, its cheerful teal paint gleaming brightly in the afternoon sun. My hard-won independence never tasted sweeter. In the 18 months since I confronted Jude and Mara with their deceitful transgressions, much had changed. With an excellent attorney's help, I leveraged the extensive documentation of Jude's philandering against any sympathy for Mara's fictitious abuse claims. The judge took a dim view of their elaborate hoax and utter lack of remorse, as he deemed in the divorce proceedings. Stripped of his polished veneer before the court, Jude acquiesced quickly to my terms, eager to avoid further public scrutiny. The settlement awarded me full ownership of our lavish apartment and 75% of all remaining assets. Jude slunk away in disgrace to lick his wounds, Mara in tow. She had attempted clinging to false reconciliation promises, but I wouldn't be moved. In the quiet aftermath, I blossomed in solitude's fertile soil. My writing career flourished now that energy formerly spent tiptoeing around volatility could be channeled into professional and personal growth. I traveled widely, cultivated new friendships, and most importantly, I cooked. Having rediscovered my passion for fusing flavors during darker days, I began hosting pop-up dining experiences from our apartment. My culinary skills, coupled with charming hospitality, quickly attracted a cult following. Soon, devoted patrons clamored for my signature roasted duck confit tacos and cardamom creme brulee well beyond makeshift dinner parties. When the owner of a failing food truck approached proposing partnership, the universe seemed to align perfectly with my entrepreneurial visions. I invested a chunk of savings into revitalizing the charming little hut on wheels into a truly eye-catching mobile kitchen. Bold teal paint and twinkling string lights attracted droves of curious admirers from the outset, but perhaps most satisfying was discovering genuine romance unexpectedly. During my first promotional photo shoot for Alara's, I clicked instantly with the talented photographer Graham over sharing travel tales while scouting locations. Our coffees afterwards kindled into deeper connection. Unlike Jude's love bombing, Graham's affections grew steadily out of genuine compatibility and mutual respect. On our recent trip celebrating the new truck launch, Graham mused the stunning vineyard views looked ideal for a small, intimate vow exchange someday soon. My heart fluttered hearing this wonderful man, with no ulterior motives, speak so earnestly of our future together. Just then, my reminiscing was interrupted by the loud rumble of the first guest's arrival, my dear friend and unofficial catering assistant, Eva. She had proven an invaluable pillar of support when other fair-weather friends scattered after my dizzying descent from corporate executive's wife to scandalous tabloid feature. I embraced her warmly. "Well, no backing out now," I joked. "Did those glowing Instagram stories I sent over pique your interest?" "Are you kidding? I've been craving duck tacos all week after that preview." She laughed. Now stop keeping me from that sublime food and go wow all these strangers. Grinning broadly, I fired up the grill with infectious enthusiasm. Tonight marked the genesis of my hard-won new existence, one defined not by toxic gazes or dancers hiding in the wings waiting to step on broken dreams. Instead, possibility and autonomy shone brightly, their rays feeding seeds for whatever rich future I chose to cultivate next. One scrumptious taco at a time.